Most men will never taste greatness. Not because they lack the ability, not because the world conspires against them, but because deep inside, they are afraid of what greatness demands. Søren Kierkegaard, the philosopher of anxiety, despair, and the unbearable weight of freedom, warned us long ago that the true enemy of man is not failure, but his own fear of becoming more than what he already is. We like to pretend that comfort is happiness, that if we stay safe, avoid risk, and follow the path laid out for us, life will reward us with peace. But Kierkegaard's voice cuts through this illusion like a blade. He whispers that the cost of greatness is suffering, isolation, and confrontation with truths most men are too weak to face. And so, men trade away their potential for security. They bury their possibility under routine, under pleasure, under excuses. Here is the forbidden truth. Most men are not destroyed by outside forces. They are destroyed by themselves. They sabotage their own ascent because greatness feels unbearable. Because to rise above mediocrity means to break free from the comfort that keeps them numb, and to step into the storm of freedom, responsibility, and rejection. Kierkegaard's warning is not gentle. He tells us plainly, if you refuse to confront despair, if you refuse to embrace the anxiety that comes with freedom, you will remain a slave. Not to chains, not to tyrants, but to your own fear of becoming great. Kierkegaard lived in Denmark in the mid-1800s, a strange and lonely figure who often wandered the streets at night, plagued by doubt and obsession. He was a man who saw deeper into the soul than most dared, and what he found terrified him. To Kierkegaard, life was not a calm journey from birth to death, but a battlefield of choices, freedom, and despair. He believed that every man carries within him an unbearable possibility, the potential to become great, or the temptation to remain small. At the heart of Kierkegaard's philosophy is the idea of anxiety, what he called the dizziness of freedom. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff. You look down at the rocks below, and fear grips you. But then another thought creeps in, I could jump. The horror is not only that you might fall, but that you are free enough to choose. This is what Kierkegaard meant. Freedom is not a gift that makes life easy. It is a burden that confronts us with infinite possibilities, each one demanding we take responsibility for who we become. Most men run from this burden. They numb themselves with distractions, cling to routines, or surrender their choices to others. They live, as Kierkegaard described, in despair, a sickness of the soul that doesn't always look like pain. Sometimes despair hides behind a smile, behind success, behind the mask of a man who seems content, but inwardly knows he has betrayed himself. Kierkegaard saw despair as the universal condition of man. Everyone carries it, but there are two ways men deal with it. The first is denial, pretending life is simple, pretending that meaning is given to you by society, by women, by careers, by money. This denial keeps you comfortable, but it also keeps you small. The second way is confrontation, standing face to face with your own freedom, your own possibility, your own terrifying responsibility. That path, Kierkegaard believed, was the beginning of greatness. But confrontation comes with a cost. To step into your freedom is to separate yourself from the herd. The masses do not want men who think. They want men who obey. And here lies the paradox Kierkegaard exposes. The intelligent man, the man who sees too much, will always unsettle others, especially women. Not because women despise intelligence itself, but because true intelligence is disruptive. It shakes the foundations of comfort. It forces people to confront truths they would rather avoid. Think of the man who refuses to play the usual games in relationships. He does not grovel for attention, does not beg for validation, does not worship at the altar of comfort. His presence alone is unsettling, because it reveals how fragile ordinary desire really is. Most people want reassurance, not truth. They want to be entertained, not awakened. And so the intelligent man, the man of depth, is often treated as dangerous. Kierkegaard himself lived this paradox. He was engaged once to a woman named Regine Olsen, whom he loved deeply. Yet he broke off the engagement, claiming that his destiny was not marriage but philosophy, that to pursue his mission, he had to embrace solitude. The world saw him as eccentric, even cruel, for abandoning love. But Kierkegaard believed he was confronting something larger, the reality that greatness demands sacrifice. He could not serve both comfort and truth. He had to choose. And this is the essence of Kierkegaard's warning. Greatness is not about talent or luck. It is about whether you can endure the anxiety of freedom without collapsing back into mediocrity. Every man is free to become great, but most will not. They will trade away their freedom for safety, for belonging, for the illusion of peace. They will avoid the dizziness of freedom by binding themselves with invisible chains. To Kierkegaard, this avoidance is the real tragedy of life. Not that men fail, but that they never even attempt. They hide from their own possibility, afraid of what it might cost them, afraid of rejection, afraid of isolation, afraid of their own greatness. When a man embraces freedom fully, when he accepts despair as part of his existence, something changes in him. He becomes heavier, deeper, more dangerous. He is no longer easily manipulated, no longer controlled by society's shallow promises. He carries himself with a presence that unsettles others because it exposes their own despair. This is why intelligent men will always provoke fear. They are walking reminders of a truth most people want buried, that every person has betrayed their potential. Kierkegaard calls this man the knight of faith, one who accepts despair, embraces freedom, and lives in full awareness of his own responsibility. Such a man walks alone, not because he rejects others, but because few can bear the weight of his presence. He is like a mirror reflecting back the cowardice of the crowd. To stand near him is to feel the burden of your own unchosen greatness pressing against you. And here is where the warning sharpens. Kierkegaard is not merely diagnosing the problem. He is challenging you. He is asking, will you remain in despair, denying your freedom, numbing yourself with the false comfort of mediocrity? Or will you step into the anxiety, the dizziness, the storm of possibility? Will you accept the unbearable cost of becoming great? This is the dividing line. Most men will not cross it. Most men will stay where they are, choosing comfort over greatness, safety over truth, fear over freedom. And Kierkegaard tells us bluntly, that choice is despair. That choice is the death of the soul long before the body dies. Greatness, he reminds us, is always possible, but it is never safe. The world Kierkegaard lived in was different from ours in technology, in customs, in religion. But the psychology of man has not changed. Men today are haunted by the same fear of freedom, the same sickness of despair, and the same temptation to trade greatness for comfort. If anything, the problem has grown worse, because the modern world has become a machine designed to keep men numb. Consider relationships. In every generation, women have been drawn to men of strength, men who carry depth, presence, and conviction. But strength is not merely physical, it is psychological. It is the strength of a man who does not collapse under the weight of freedom. Most men today seek to be liked, to be approved, to be accepted. They chase validation, hoping that if they play the right role, they will be loved. But love cannot be earned through performance. A man who lives for validation is like a leaf blown about by the wind, attractive only to those who want something to control. This is why intelligent men disturb women. Not because women despise intelligence, but because true intelligence is paired with independence. The man who has confronted despair and accepted freedom does not beg for love, does not bend his soul to fit another's comfort. He brings presence, not performance. And presence is polarizing. It draws in some, but it terrifies others. Think of the difference between the man who texts desperately, waiting by his phone, shaping his words to sound impressive, versus the man who texts when he chooses, speaks directly, and refuses to contort himself for approval. The first man is safe, predictable, easy to consume. The second man carries an unsettling gravity. He cannot be controlled. He may be loved, but he will never be owned. This is the Kierkegaardian truth playing out in the modern dating world. Women are not scared of intelligence in the sense of IQ. They are unsettled by men whose inner freedom makes them untouchable. For most women, and most men, this level of independence is threatening because it forces them to confront their own dependence, their own despair. And it does not stop at relationships. Look at society. Everywhere, you are told to conform, to blend in, to follow the safe path. Go to school, get the job, obey the rules, consume the products, and never ask too many questions. But Kierkegaard warned that this is the path of despair, the slow suffocation of the soul. Society rewards obedience, but greatness requires disobedience. To become great is to separate yourself from the herd, to stop seeking the approval of the crowd, to embrace the loneliness of freedom. This is why true greatness feels dangerous. It is dangerous to the systems that profit from mediocrity. A man who thinks too deeply, who asks too many questions, who lives by his own freedom, is ungovernable. He cannot be manipulated by slogans, by trends, by shallow pleasures. He is not a consumer in the usual sense. He consumes less because he is more. And this is why such men are feared. They disrupt the balance of comfort. But the heaviest arena of application is not society, not even relationships. It is the man's own private life. Think about your own routines. How much of what you do is driven by your freedom, your genuine choice? And how much is driven by habit, by fear, by the desperate attempt to avoid despair? You wake up, check your phone, scroll through endless distractions. You go to work, do what is expected, come home, numb yourself with entertainment, sleep, repeat. Somewhere inside, you feel the quiet ache. I am meant for more. But instead of confronting it, you drown it. This is despair in Kierkegaard's sense. Not necessarily screaming or weeping, but the hollowing out of a soul that knows it is avoiding its own greatness. And here lies the deepest warning. Kierkegaard believed that anxiety, the dizziness of freedom, is not something to escape, but something to embrace. If you feel restless, uncertain, terrified of possibility, that is not a curse. It is the sign you are standing at the edge of greatness. Anxiety is not your enemy. It is the proof of your freedom. But most men misinterpret it. They think their anxiety means they are broken, weak, defective. So they retreat back into comfort. They never realize the very thing they run from is the doorway to their power. This is why Kierkegaard is so brutal. He strips away every excuse. You cannot blame society entirely. You cannot blame women. You cannot blame fate. At the end of the day, the choice is yours. Will you remain small, or will you bear the weight of freedom? And here is the modern tragedy. Men today are softer than ever, not because they are physically weaker, but because they cannot stand the psychological weight of freedom. They crave safety nets, constant reassurance, and quick fixes. They expect motivation to carry them, rather than discipline. They want greatness without sacrifice, freedom without responsibility, love without risk. They want the crown without the cross. Kierkegaard would laugh, or perhaps weep, at this modern delusion. He would say, "You do not escape despair by hiding from it. You escape despair by facing it, by owning it, by walking directly into it. Greatness is not found in comfort, but in the decision to embrace the storm." And if you want proof, look at history. Every man who ever rose above mediocrity faced rejection, ridicule, loneliness. Think of Socrates, executed for corrupting the youth with his questions. Think of Nietzsche, dying mad and alone after dismantling the illusions of morality. Think of Kierkegaard himself, mocked in the newspapers of his own city, walking the streets as a figure of ridicule. Greatness never comes with applause in the moment. The crowd always resists. But the men who endure the loneliness of freedom reshape the world. So what does this mean for you? It means that when you feel isolated, when others misunderstand you, when your presence unsettles those around you, it may not be a sign you are wrong. It may be the very sign that you are walking the Kierkegaardian path, the path of freedom, responsibility, and greatness. To live this way is not easy. It is to become, in Kierkegaard's words, a knight of faith. A man who steps into the storm of freedom and does not retreat. A man who accepts despair, not as a curse, but as the foundation of his existence. Such a man will always be feared, sometimes hated, often misunderstood. But he will also be unbreakable. And this is the challenge Kierkegaard leaves us with in the modern world. Will you keep trading your potential for comfort? Or will you bear the burden of freedom and step into the terrifying possibility of your own greatness? Kierkegaard never wrote a manual on how to live. He wrote warnings, parables, reflections, pieces of a mirror for us to see ourselves in. But if we are to take his teaching and translate it into a man's daily battle, the lessons become brutally clear. The first is this: never run from despair. Most men spend their lives trying to bury it. They hide behind work, alcohol, sex, scrolling, endless distractions, anything to avoid sitting alone with themselves. But Kierkegaard tells us that despair is not an enemy to kill, but a teacher to confront. If you feel restless, empty, lost, that does not mean you are broken. It means you are awake. Despair is the sound of your soul demanding more from you. To run from it is to run from your own greatness. The second is this: stop begging for approval. Kierkegaard's life was proof that greatness isolates. He broke off his engagement because he believed his mission demanded solitude. That does not mean every man must reject love, but it does mean you must stop bending your soul to win affection. Respect cannot be begged for. Love cannot be begged for. Approval cannot be begged for. The man who chases validation becomes a servant. The man who embodies freedom becomes a presence others cannot ignore. The third lesson: embrace the dizziness of freedom. Anxiety, uncertainty, fear of choice. These are not curses, they are signs you are alive. Most men think anxiety is a flaw to fix. Kierkegaard flips this upside down. Anxiety is proof that you are free. It is proof that you stand at the edge of possibility. Do not retreat. Stand there. Let the dizziness wash over you. The man who avoids choice remains small forever. The man who chooses, even trembling, begins the path to greatness. Fourth, accept that you will be misunderstood. Intelligent men frighten others, not because they are cruel, but because their depth exposes what others want to hide. You will be mocked, resisted, even hated. People will call you arrogant, strange, too much, too intense. Let them. Their reaction is not a sign of your failure, but of your power. Kierkegaard himself was ridiculed in the newspapers of Copenhagen, treated as a joke. Yet his words outlived every one of his critics. To seek greatness is to accept loneliness. To be feared is often to be on the right path. Fifth, do not trade freedom for comfort. Every day, the world offers you chains disguised as gifts. Promotions that enslave you to meaningless work. Relationships that suffocate your soul. Entertainment that consumes your time but leaves you hollow. The temptation is always to choose comfort, but Kierkegaard warns that comfort is the slowest form of death. Freedom is costly. It will strip you of illusions. It will demand sacrifice, but only freedom allows you to live as yourself. The sixth lesson is perhaps the hardest. Sacrifice is inevitable. You will either sacrifice your potential for the sake of comfort, or you will sacrifice your comfort for the sake of potential. There is no avoiding this exchange. Kierkegaard's choice to give up his engagement was painful, but it was his sacrifice for truth. Your sacrifices may look different: giving up toxic habits, leaving environments that weaken you, letting go of people who refuse to grow. But to become great is to accept loss. A crown is always bought with blood. The seventh, live as if you are already responsible. Kierkegaard's entire philosophy was about responsibility. Not waiting for meaning to be handed to you, not waiting for life to justify itself, but creating meaning by your choices. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for clarity. Act as if the burden is already yours, because it is. Your life is not owed to society, to your parents, to your partner, to your job. It is yours. And every day you delay taking responsibility, you slip deeper into despair. The eighth and final lesson: become a knight of faith. This is Kierkegaard's image of the man who has accepted despair, embraced freedom, and lives with unshakable resolve. The knight of faith does not collapse under uncertainty. He does not bow to the crowd. He does not run from suffering. He walks into life fully aware of its weight, yet unbroken by it. Such a man cannot be manipulated. He cannot be owned. He carries a gravity that unsettles others because it reminds them of what they could be. These are not soft lessons. They do not flatter the ego or promise easy success. They are harsh, demanding, merciless. But they are the lessons that separate the man who dies unknown, even to himself, from the man who confronts existence head-on. Kierkegaard's challenge is this: stop waiting. Stop numbing. Stop hiding. You are free whether you like it or not. And with that freedom comes the heaviest burden in the world: the responsibility to become what you are capable of being. Kierkegaard's truth is merciless. He tells us that most men will never dare to become free. They will spend their lives running from despair, clutching at comfort, begging for approval, and dying without ever touching the greatness that was possible for them. But he also tells us something else. That despair, the very thing you are afraid of, is your doorway. That the loneliness you feel is not proof of your weakness, but proof of your freedom. That the dizziness you experience when you face choice, when you face responsibility, is not a curse, but a sacred sign. This is why intelligent men will always be feared. Because intelligence, real intelligence, is not about cleverness or IQ. It is about the courage to face despair, the strength to carry freedom, the willingness to live without approval. Such men are not easily controlled. They cannot be bent into roles. They cannot be bribed with comfort. Their very presence unsettles others because it forces everyone else to see the chains they are still wearing. And so you have a choice. You can go back to sleep, return to the crowd, numb yourself with distractions, live as if your life were not your own. That path is easy. It is applauded. It is safe. But it will never satisfy you. Or you can choose the harder path, to face your despair directly, to embrace the dizziness of freedom, to live as if the burden is already yours. That path will cost you. It will strip you. It will make you feared, mocked, and perhaps even hated. But it will also make you unbreakable. Kierkegaard's warning is not meant to comfort you. It is meant to disturb you. It is meant to shake you from the sleep of conformity and force you to ask, will I keep running for my freedom, or will I stand and bear its weight? Most men will never answer that question honestly. They will remain slaves, not because chains are on their wrists, but because chains are in their hearts. But a rare few, will hear the call. They will look despair in the eye, they will walk into the storm, and they will refuse to bow. Those men are the ones Kierkegaard called knights of faith. Those men are the ones who change the world. The question is not whether they exist. The question is whether you will be one of them.